Before you listen to this BBC podcast, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Stevie Middleton and I'm a BBC Commissioner for a load of sport podcasts. I'm lucky to do that at the BBC because I get to work with leading journalists, experienced pundits and the biggest sports stars. Together we bring you untold stories and fascinating insights straight from the players' mouths. But the best thing about doing this at the BBC is our unique access to the sporting world. What that means is that we can bring you podcasts that create a real connection to dedicated sports fans across the UK. So if you like this podcast, head over to BBC Sounds where you'll find plenty more.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, the views and the analysis you need on this day, the 8th in May. It's a Wednesday. I'm Phil Goodlad, and here's what's coming up today.
McMillan fires it, it's a great ball! It's in! The equaliser!
We reflect on an extraordinary evening of drama as the playoffs get underway in earnest. Also,
Hanlon returns it, it's in the net! Unbelievable! Hibernian have snatched it to level things up!
as Hanlon and Stevenson prepare to say goodbye at Hibs, what will their legacy be at Easter Road? And
can Scotland get some reward? Yes, they can, because Kieran Tierney has headed in his first Scotland goal.
We get the latest on Scotland star Kieran Tierney as he battles back to fitness ahead of the Euros.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Jordan Campbell from The Athletic and our man of many clubs, Lee Miller. Gentlemen, hello.
How you doing, Phil?
Before we go any further, I want you to tell me the truth. Was it the Champions League semi-final for you last night or the Scottish football playoffs? Jordan, I'll start with you.
Well, I managed to do a bit of both. I don't know if that's cheating or not, but yeah, I did both in reverse, but obviously started with the best, which is Scotland, and then worked my way down to the Champions League games. Yeah.
You do realise that this is the Daily Football Podcast and not the United Nations. Diplomacy is not required here, Jordan. Lee, what about you? Did you go Borussia Dortmund, Paris Saint-Germain, or did you go Thistle Airdrie?
I was at the Excelsior. I was watching that on the screen. I thought it was a really good game, Airdrie Partick. Really good game for a neutral point of view, anyway. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I have to say that I flicked somewhat, but remained quite often on the BBC Scotland game, just simply because every time you changed, there was nothing happening in the semi-final, but everything was happening in the playoff, and I just thought the game could go either way, and it was absorbing to watch. We'll get into it in just a moment. I first want to round up the latest football headlines for you. As mentioned, Airdrie and Partick Thistle, 2-2, a thrilling Premiership playoff quarter-final first leg last night. The sides meet again on Friday. In the Championship playoff, they're at the semi-final stage. It's Alloa and Hamilton who drew 2 apiece. Montrose and Inverness were goalless, whilst for League One, there were 2-1 victories for Dumbarton and Spartans over Stirling Albion and Peterhead respectively. The second leg of all those matches being played this weekend. In other news, it's understood that the SPFL is close to agreeing a new league sponsorship deal with betting company William Hill. St Mirren defender Alex Gogic has agreed a new 3-year deal to remain with the Paisley side until 2027. And Hibs have announced that Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson, who've played more than 1,000 times for the club, will dare to leave Easter Road in the summer. Gentlemen, let's start then with last night's playoff. I could go down the old stereotypical road, Jordan Campbell, of saying it was an advertisement for lower league football, that it was a game of two halves. Let's just put it out and say as it was, that was a thoroughly absorbing game of football between Thistle and Airdrie last night.
Oh, it was brilliant, and I found it really refreshing to tune into a Scottish Championship game and watch football of that quality, really. I find watching Airdrie, what Rhys McCabe's done there is amazing. Brought them up last season to win the Challenge Cup, and you just look at the style of play that he's implemented there. There's a real identity there, which you just don't see really in Scottish football a lot of the time. A lot of time you see two teams coming up against each other who are more or less identical. The game's about second balls, and it's really broken up. But You've got centre backs overlapping, stepping out with the ball. You've got not 2 number 6s dropping in, really playing it out for the back. So I found it really, really great, a really great game to watch. I think Airdrie probably look the better team in terms of having a structure, and you can really see what they're doing. But after the first 20 minutes, Partick then managed to flip the momentum, and I think you could see their experience getting the ball up to Brian Graham early and playing off him, and also managed to flip it round. But I don't know who will be happier coming away for that with a 2 each draw, because I think Airdrie probably played the better stuff, but both of them had chances to add more. So I think it's pretty evenly balanced. But if you look at the momentum, you've got a team last year who had a successful time in the playoffs, and you've got another one who might be a little bit scarred by what happened. So I think Airdrie probably fancy themselves to go and do the job in the second leg.
Lee, I think I've probably mentioned this before. I'm a big fan in sport of course and distance, of a team or an individual who has done it in the past and knows what to expect. Because of that, and because of Partick Thistle in the playoffs last year, I would expect them to know what to do to get through. But yet Airdrie last night showed that they were a team that were without fear, and that they played good football, and actually in that second half looked for large spells like they were going to be the only ones to run out winners.
Yeah, I think it's, like John said, it's finely poised. I think Chris Doolan probably comes away the happier of the two, although Brian Graham has a massive opportunity in the second half to score the kind of winner in the game. But like John said, the way Airdrie play is really pleasing on the eye. There's loads of rotations. Rhys McCabe's done a fantastic job, but all these players, which is difficult to do, have bought into what they're trying to do, is play football the right way, and they get results and they get goals from it. Chris Doolan's not getting away from, he's done a tremendous job at Partick Thistle, slightly different in the way they play, but they have loads of experience. They've got players that have been there before. Scott Robinson, who scores a goal, he's been there with Livy, got up with Livy, with myself. Brian Graham's been there. Chris Doolan's actually been there himself as a player. So he's got loads of people within that group who understand the pressures, and obviously they take it back to Firhill, which they'll be happy at with the big pitch, and they'll be able to play their kind of style. But it's an interesting game, a really interesting tie, which I don't have a clue who's going to win it. But I'm really looking forward to the second leg, which will be, I think it'll be the same again. It'll be kind of end-to-end stuff, and hopefully there's loads of goals.
It's not just time we make the Premiership a top 16 team and invite all these good clubs. Oh no, sorry, that's a debate for another day.
All for that. All for that.
But genuinely, though, you can imagine that Airdrie team playing in the Premiership. I'd be excited to watch them, because I think, like, when you watch them, you think that's just a coaching success, really. You look at some of the players at Frizzell, Telfer, Watson, a lot of boys whose career had dwindled, really. And I mean, even look at Megwa at right back. I mean, he was brilliant again last night. Maybe I've done a bit better for the goal where he never tucked in, but he kept Fitzpatrick pretty quiet, which I think he's done a few times this season. But I thought he was really impressive, and Hibs fans must be watching that thinking he can't be far off being at the level next season, regardless of whether Airdrie go up or not.
So you mentioned Hibs fans. I wonder what the Airdrie fans will be thinking, regardless of what happens in the second leg on Friday night, because throughout the season, Rhys McCabe has been mentioned as being doing a brilliant job at Airdrie. His side played Hearts in the live game a couple of rounds ago in the Scottish Cup. That's them now again live last night and again on Friday night. I mean, there'll be chairmen across the country thinking, you know what, if he can do that in the Championship with a team that's maybe not as fancied as the others in the division, what could he do for our side? Yeah,
definitely. I totally agree. I think it won't be long until you see Rhys McCabe getting a bigger job, all due respect to Airdrie, but you need to kind of start somewhere and have a club that's willing to take a chance in terms of understanding he's trying to implement the way he's playing, results to the side. He can implement how he's playing, and the results will follow if you understand and trust the process. And that's, I think, what Airdrie have done. And listen, the manager before, Ian Murray, set the foundations. He played some excellent football, and Rhys McCabe's just took it on to another level, in my opinion.
I would love to see him stay in Scotland, though, because
yeah,
the natural thing is that you see English teams and they'll be watching Rhys McCabe and they'll think, well, he's really shown an identity. But you look at, it's interesting because Ian Cathro done an interview with my colleague this week, and he was saying he looks back on his time at Hearts over 10 years ago and sort of regrets it because he doesn't think Scottish football was ready for him, and he says he feels it may never be ready for someone like him. But I think you look at McCabe and you think, well, he's proven that there is a way to play progressive football and be innovative and be imaginative, and it will work.
Just on that, and I'm interested in both your views on this, do you think that Scottish football has in the last 10 years, and I don't know whether to say matured or whether to say grown up, because both would suggest that we're a sport of just squabbling little children, but the Ian Cathro storyline is interesting because maybe he was a type of coach that Scottish football couldn't adapt to. I don't mean that the coach adapts to Scottish football. I mean that Scottish football couldn't adapt to the coach. We weren't ready for it. Does Rhys McCabe's story show that we now are?
It's difficult to look at one example and then extrapolate that and say the whole culture's changed. I don't think the culture's changed enough in 10 years, really. I think you look at the number of young boys playing in the Premiership. I spoke about this a few months ago. It's nowhere near good enough. So I think for that point of view, the league system doesn't help that in terms of giving managers the time and space to be brave and go and implement a style of play, because in Scotland, if you don't start well, you don't get the buy-in. But I think that's what McCabe has been able to do. He's been able to say, well, look, I've got the results. This is what can be achieved. But I still don't think that it's come far enough yet. But, I don't think you can look at the Cathro experience and say that was all Scottish football's fault. I also think there's part of his man management, or whether it was his coaching, the two to number one. And I think that's even more credit to McCabe, is that he's been a player manager and he's managed to do both. So I think that's testament to his ability to really manage the dressing room dynamics and go from being a teammate to being a manager. So if anything, it's doubly impressive what he's done. But I don't think you look at Cathro and that failing at Hearts and you can draw parallels, because obviously Hearts are third biggest team in the country at the moment. So I think it's apples and oranges. But I don't personally think Scottish football's come far enough in that time.
Just quickly on the other playoff games that we had last night, 0-0 for Inverness away at Montrose. Lots of goals and excitement in the other matches, lower leagues. Just on Cally Thistle, Duncan Ferguson's side, 0-0 up against Montrose this weekend. That's a precarious situation for Cally Thistle to be in.
No, it is. And you look at Duncan Ferguson personally and you think, he didn't have the best experience going in at Forest Green. Obviously, they've been plummeting the last couple of years, but you do fear for him because, you think the two back-to-back jobs, he ends up going down. Obviously, Inverness are quite a big club in that league. I think probably in the last day you're thinking maybe a win will be enough, and in Queen's Park go and get the result to keep you in the playoffs. So I think that was a bit of a body blow for Inverness. I think you really wanted to be almost tying up that game, that playoff in the first leg. So it does feel like they've just lost all momentum really. And I think that's always the difficulty with bringing in a big name, is that it almost puts even more pressure on you to justify it.
Hibs have announced the club stalwarts Paul Hannon and Lewis Stevenson will move at the end of the season. I think it's something like 1,100 matches between them. Lee Miller, what will the legacy be of those two at Hibs?
Oh, two legends. There's no getting away from that.
That's a strong word to use, legends.
The fact that they've played so many games combined. Stevenson obviously won the League Cup and then went on to lift the Scottish Cup after 114 years. They're just, the way I look at it, they're steady away, solid defenders, solid players. And you speak to a lot of pros within the game, and not only do they talk about how good players they are, as people as well. They're really good people, and they're down to earth, and they give you the time of day. And I read up in a few bits that people were talking about them, and it's refreshing to see that they've stayed in the game for so long at the one club. They're nice people. at the end of the day, it's not just about their football.
Given that, are you surprised that Hibs are letting them go?
No, I think everybody's got their shelf life. I think they've had a few mistakes over the years, possibly, and the manager will just want a freshness, I think, and I think it's just time for them to kind of move on and do fresh things and move on to other things within their career. And they'll look back at their career and think it was a very successful one to play that amount of games in a massive club like Hibs, and they'll be happy with that.
It says a lot about their character that they've never been the two stars of the team, really, and they've come through at Hibs at a time where, their two biggest successes came when they were in the Championship. So you would never have associated that with a legendary status at Hibs. But for a decade almost, they've just been a stapler at that left-hand side of the defence. So it'll be strange to tune into a game where they're not somewhere around it, because it feels like maybe for the last 3 or 4 years you've been expecting them to maybe be phased out. But I mean, even when Josh Doig came in, Stevenson ended up winning his place back for a while, and Porteous talking about how important the two of them were as well. But I think they're two players that everybody can resonate with, because they've completely maximised their ability. They've got Scotland caps to show for their career and everything. So yeah, I think they've had a great career at Hibs, and I don't think they'll leave them many regrets having played that many games.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Finally, I want to touch on some better news for Scotland, because for the last few weeks it appears that we've been some sort of hideous casualty episode where we've been updating people on the latest injury. Kieran Tierney, said to be sooner rather than later coming back to action for Real Sociedad. Lee, it goes without saying that Kieran Tierney is a name that would be one of the first on any Scotland starting lineup at the Euros. But also to just get that psychological boost with 40 days to go, that one of your best players should be back fit for the Euros. How big will that be for the national side?
Oh, it's huge. Kieran Tierney can play obviously in several different positions, but in terms of his work rate, his drive, people thrive off his enthusiasm for the game. He's been excellent for Scotland over the years, and I think it's a massive boost going into this tournament, because there's no getting away from it. We need all our best players fit to go into that, and obviously we've lost a couple, and a few are struggling with injuries, and that's the last thing you want to see from a Scotland fan's perspective. But hopefully he hits the ground running and he's good to go for the start of the campaign.
Jordan, you've been out to see him in San Sebastian. I wouldn't mind seeing your expenses for that wee trip.
We had to keep that quiet.
Well, okay, we won't say any more about it. How did you find him?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was terrible timing, really, because he'd just picked up an injury when they were playing Real Madrid at home. But fair play to him, he ended up speaking to me a couple of days later. And yeah, he should be back in training this week. It was obviously down at the time, because that's the third injury he's picked up this season, and it just feels like every time he gets going again and gets back into the team, something else disrupts him. So I think he takes injury quite hard, because he's one of those boys that just loves to be playing week in, week out and getting a bit of momentum, I think. But yeah, no, he seemed really positive, and when he's speaking about Scotland, it really hit me just how important that's been to him the last couple of years, because he's been used to being, vice captain at Celtic, or a main player at Arsenal, and even he was even spoken about in captaincy terms just 3 years ago. And then last season was the first time not being first choice, being sort of phased out of the team. This year he's only made 14 starts because he's two hamstring injuries, so it's been a new experience for him. But I think what he was saying was last season, I was just thinking about 2 weeks to Scotland, a week to Scotland. That was keeping them going. And he was talking about how Steve Clarke has been amazing for his career the last few years in terms of just keeping them going and keeping them motivated. And he did say, I'm really glad that the interviews don't start now with Keane and Robertson playing the same team. So I think we've cracked the code with that one. So yeah, I think it's testament that no one thinks that is being a problem anymore. We just think it works quite well now.
It's funny, that's like a debate almost as old as the Ian Cathro debate 10 years ago, the Robertson and Tierney. Before I go, Lee Miller, any word on your son Lennon and links to the English Premier League?
No, you see things coming up on Twitter and stuff and different Facebook groups and that, but Lennon's quite happy doing what he's doing just now. He's doing fine. He's in a a team where he's allowed to play, he's been trusted as a first team player, and he's just loving playing first team football. Enjoying his time at Motherwell just now. We'll see what happens going forward.
Listen, we'll leave it there. Lee Miller, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Jordan Campbell, great to have you along as ever as well. Sports Scene, second leg of the Premiership playoff quarter-final, Partick Thistle against Airdrie. That one for you live on Friday night on the BBC Scotland channel. Remember too, every day a new Scottish football podcast drops for you every weekday, bright and early. We'll have a special bonus edition out later actually, with Scotland and Watford defender Ryan Porteous. He's in conversation with our very own Jonathan Sutherland. For now, though, whatever you do, enjoy our beautiful game, and we'll speak again soon.
Just a quick reminder, the Behind the Goals podcast is available every Tuesday with me, Rachel Corsey, and me, Leanne Crichton. It's your one-stop shop for our take on everything that's happening in the world of football. Just head to BBC Sounds or wherever you get your podcasts and search for Behind the Goals.